Hey, everybody. Welcome to In Broad Daylight, a solo podcast hosted by me, obviously. I'm Adam Todd Brown, and oh man, did you hear the news, Jack? Biden has officially dropped out of the 2024 presidential race. Not sure I needed to specify which race I was talking about there. I'll fix it in post. This is news that a whole lot of people saw coming, but media outlets are still treating it like it's a huge surprise, which has to be a respect for Biden thing, I'd imagine. That said, it's been reported that he didn't tell his staff until right before he released the letter he wrote about it to the public. Of course he wrote a letter. That is what great grandpas do. Here's a quote from Biden's letter. "It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve as your president. And while it has been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it is in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term." End quote. And hey, same. Also, how do our elections just keep getting crazier? Remember when we all thought it couldn't get any wilder than a bunch of fuckfaces in Brooks Brothers suits bullying the Supreme Court into declaring George W. Bush president in 2000? Fast forward to 2024, we've had dozens of felony convictions, an assassination attempt, Aaron Rodgers' unstable ass getting legitimate vice president buzz from a guy with a worm in his brain, and now this. Honestly, I think this is the absolute best thing that could have happened for Democrats, and it is happening at the absolute best time. More on that in a second. But first, here's another quote from Biden's letter. "Today, I want to offer my full support and endorsement for Kamala to be the nominee of our party this year. Democrats, it's time to come together and beat Trump. Let's do this." End quote. I don't think he's going to get much argument on the come together and beat Trump part. Whether people come together around Kamala Harris is way less certain. Don't get me wrong. She's already gotten a lot of support from her fellow Democrats, and that's perfectly understandable. She's not perfect, but she does strike me as a way more viable candidate than Biden, especially against Trump. Again, not perfect. She definitely has some weak spots in her record that she's going to have to explain, but so does Trump, and so does any other candidate. What everyone who has opposed Trump on the Democrat side has severely lacked up to this point is personality. Trump has plenty of that, and so far, he's only had to face Biden and America's most awkward abuela, Hillary Clinton. Kamala Harris, at least in the personality department, is a massive step up from either of those two. Remember what she did after she dropped out of the 2020 presidential election? The electric slide is what she did. Can you even in a billion years imagine Hillary Clinton hitting the electric slide? You cannot. And sure, her party energy sometimes feels more like undercover cop who's there to spy on the party energy, but it's energy all the same, baby. Someone who is capable of executing a perfectly timed eye roll on the debate stage is something Democrats have been in desperate need of since 2015, at least. That said, not everyone has been keen to immediately rally around Kamala Harris as the obvious choice to replace Biden. A lot have. According to the Washington Post, as I write this, of 263 congressional Democrats and 23 Democratic governors, 178 have endorsed Harris. But there are some notable holdouts, with the biggest being Barack Obama. His statement about Biden's departure from the race was long and very complimentary toward his former vice president, but also includes this quote: "I have extraordinary confidence that the leaders of our party will be able to create a process from which an outstanding nominee emerges." End quote. And I wonder who he might have in mind instead. A few more notable names who've so far failed to board the Harris train include Bernie Sanders, Rashida Tlaib, and until right before I recorded this, Nancy Pelosi, who reportedly told a meeting of California delegates that she favored an open process in selecting a new candidate and that political elites immediately crowning the vice president as the nominee would turn voters off. And here's a thing I don't say a lot. I totally agree with Nancy Pelosi, or at least I did, I guess. I saw an MSNBC headline the day Biden made the announcement that said Democrats have three options: Biden, Kamala, or chaos. And here's the thing. I think they should choose chaos, at least until the Democratic National Convention, which starts just under a month from now on August 19th in Chicago. Along with personality, another thing Democrats have lacked for a long time is excitement of any sort. Chaos is exciting. Chaos gets people talking. Chaos dominates the news. And oh man, do Democrats ever need to dominate the news right now? And it needs to be more than just polite disagreement about who should get the nomination. Democrats need a full-on media circus for the next 28 days or so. I'm talking 2003 California gubernatorial recall election level crazy. If you're unfamiliar, that was an election where a guy with a bunch of gripes with then California Governor Gray Davis managed to get an actual recall election going, and that election turned into a whole damn national spectacle. Almost immediately, more than 150 people filed papers to run for governor. And if you're watching this on YouTube, yes, that is watermelon smashing comedian Gallagher in the midst of all those faces on the front page of the LA Times. When it was all said and done, names like Ariana Huffington, former baseball commissioner Peter Uberoth, Hustler magazine publisher Larry Flint, actor Gary Coleman, and adult actor Mary Carey all finished in the top 10, which is alarming. But on the bright side, at least a real politician ended up winning. I'm talking, of course, about Arnold Schwarzenegger. California's crazy, man. But that is precisely the kind of chaos Democrats need right now. Yes, they need unity and to rally around a candidate with a legitimate shot at beating Trump soon, but not right now. Right now, they need drama and antics and shenanigans. They need the looming threat of Fred Durst or John Bon Jovi or anyone from Insane Clown Posse getting the Democratic nomination or something. Who knows what kind of names might emerge during a fiasco like that? Maybe some of them will be good. Maybe some of them will even be better options than Kamala Harris. But that's not really the point. The point is to distract from the story that is dominating the media landscape right now, which is that Trump just survived an assassination. If Democrats just cut straight to anointing Kamala Harris as the nominee, Trump gets to keep talking about God, intervening on his behalf, and just has to shoehorn some Kamala material in for good measure. Why make it that easy? Let him sweat it out a bit and wonder what it will be like if he has to run against, I don't know, Bruce Springsteen instead. Biden dropping out has captured the media's attention. Now keep that attention. I spent most of last week convinced that Trump surviving an assassination attempt was the last nail in the coffin when it came to Democrats' chances of winning this election. But, and I know this is a crime in 2024, I read something that has kind of changed my mind. It's an article on The Atlantic by a writer named Elliot Ackerman, who floats the idea that maybe the Trump campaign has peaked too soon. Ackerman is a U.S. infantryman who puts the attempt on Trump's life in military battle terms and says Trump's campaign has reached the culminating point of victory, which is described as, quote, the threshold when military advantages peak and then rapidly turn into disadvantages, end quote. Ackerman describes it further in what I confess is a much longer quote, but also in a more layman's terms kind of way, thusly: your troops have sent the defeated enemy fleeing down its reverse slope. You stand triumphant atop that hill. Psychologically, you're vulnerable to believing two things: that your victory is complete and that your enemy no longer poses a meaningful threat. The temptation then becomes to destroy the last of your enemy, to take more ground. If you do this, if you don't recognize your culminating point, if you try to remain on the offensive too long, instead of setting up a good defense, you become dangerously exposed to a counterattack by a regrouped enemy. End quote. That, to me, sounds like an accurate description of where Trump is at right now. Does he turn into a kinder, gentler version of Trump that Democrats probably are not ready for? Or does he fall back into the persona that got him this far? Whatever direction he goes, you have to admit, there is almost no way Trump is going to match the drama and intensity that swirled around his campaign in the days immediately after the attempt on his life. But I personally feel like he botched his chance to truly capitalize on whatever momentum that generated by delivering a Republican National Convention acceptance speech that could best be described as fucking boring. He came out of his brush with death talking about unity, and that speech proved that's a thing he's not completely comfortable with. While he's figuring out what kind of Trump he wants to be, Democrats need to slide into the news cycle with some unrest of their own. I mean, they've already done that. Now they just need to milk it a little bit. Throw every name you can think of at the wall for the next few weeks. Trump will be too busy coming up with demeaning nicknames for all of them to focus on anything else. And again, maybe amidst all that chaos, Democrats might find a candidate that makes people want to vote for them for reasons that don't begin and end with because they aren't Trump. Also, something that isn't mentioned in that Atlantic article in regards to the possibility that Trump's campaign may have peaked a little early is just the sheer timing of what happened. We still have 4 months until the election, and that is an eternity in presidential campaign time. We are presented with and consume so much information these days. Things that happened 4 months ago can sometimes feel like they happened a year ago. I think a firm grasp on how time works is one of the things we lost during COVID. By the time this election finally rolls around, half of us will have to stop and think about whether what happened to Trump happened in 2023 or 2024. There is plenty of time for Democrats to turn this shit around. I don't know. I'm just happy Biden did the right thing. But at the end of the day, I'm pretty sure we're headed for Kamala Harris getting this nomination. I know people currently see her as mostly just an extension of the Biden administration, but she does have some obvious advantages over Biden. And I'm not just talking about her being 135 years younger than him. I think the biggest area of concern where she stands out from Biden is abortion. Saturday Night Mass Joe is a practicing Catholic, and there have been some suggestions that Democrats like him, who defended abortion rights vocally but never did anything to preserve the Roe versus Wade ruling as federal law, are the reason it eventually got overturned. He's also had a back and forth voting record on abortion issues, including voting in favor of a bill that would have allowed individual states to overturn Roe v. Wade during the Reagan administration. All of that makes him not the best messenger when it comes to arguing in favor of women's reproductive rights. Kamala Harris has none of those issues. She's been consistent in her support of reproductive rights, and that's why she's done most of the Biden administration's talking about it during her time as VP. Her reluctance to investigate police killings when she was Attorney General of California will come up, But also she did introduce a bill in the wake of the murder of George Floyd in 2020 that would have made it easier to prosecute cops, that would have also included a national database of police misconduct, but that didn't pass. Go figure. And hey, at least she didn't literally write the crime bill that created the prison industrial complex in this country. She's got that over Biden, if nothing else. Is that going to be enough to beat Trump? I don't know. All I know is that even after an attempted assassination last week, this election has somehow managed to still get even more interesting. We'll see how it goes from here. And hey, that's our episode. Thanks for watching. If you're doing that for free on YouTube, please note you can see an even longer version of this video when you subscribe at adamtoddbrown.substack.com. Either way, I love you all the same. See you next week.